Hey, what's up, everybody? Fred Minnick here, and today I'm going to address a question I get all the time and some very specific questions from my group Club Marzipan, which if you want to learn more about, go in the description to check out my whiskey club, Club Marzipan. The subject is, how do I work in the bourbon industry? People all the time, whether it's a private tour I'm giving or a private tasting, or if I'm doing a book signing, or I'm just at a bar and someone recognizes me and they want to like talk to me like, man, I really want to work in the bourbon world. How do I do it? It really, the simplest answer I can give to this, and it does make sense. It's like, do what you're good at. Find an opportunity within the industry and at what you're good at. If you are in human resources, believe it or not, there is a need for human resources at distilleries, at distributors, at restaurant companies. You know, there's all these facets that touch the bourbon industry, and it doesn't matter what it is you do as a profession. They need that. If you're in IT, believe me, I've seen the IT wires and departments all throughout the bourbon industry. They need help. I have a really good friend who took over IT for a major company, and he's like, yep, they need the help back here. If you are in sales, believe me, there are tons of opportunities to be a sales rep at the distributor level. Now, you might have to sling some products that you don't want to, such as a vodka or a muscadine wine that, you know, only sells in Georgia, but you will get the opportunity to sell bourbon at some point. So, you know, if you're in sales, those opportunities are going to be there in a lot of places. And that's something I do want to address very specifically. And that is, if you're going to be in this business, you're eventually going to have to taste or do something that is not in that big, sexy picture of what you think the bourbon world is. What I do, it looks really cool from afar, but if you had any idea how much work it took to get where I am, 16, 17 years of this, training, working myself up, writing, interviewing people. And by the way, to this day, I don't just get to sit back and drink the Buffalo Trace Antique Collection or, you know, some special product like the Maker's Mark Cask Strength. Sure, I get those products, Maker's Mark Cellar Cask Strength, Cellar Aged Cask Strength. God, that was so good. I get those products. I get to taste them, but you know, you don't see the 1,800 other products that I taste. Sometimes I do reviews on them. Sometimes I publish them. But, man, there's a lot of bad whiskey out there. And if you're going to be a taster, you have to taste the bad along with the good. And I worked myself in this world as a writer. So I was a writer, and I evolved what I do based on where there was availability. I started out writing for magazines. Magazines kind of, dwindle up a little bit. I start my own magazine, the Pandemic Kits. I'm a part of events and events companies. The Pandemic Kits made me, get myself here on YouTube, which thank God I found YouTube, because this really did give me a second career, gave me a second opportunity to do what I love. So I love this community. And I love all the other whiskey tubers out there. Well, most of them. And I got to say that once you find yourself in a position where your foot's in the door in the industry, you don't want to leave it. You do not want to leave it. This is an amazing industry to be a part of. It's so much fun. But if you don't respect it, if you don't appreciate the product, and you're just like, I'm going to go party all the time. Woo! You know what? Maybe you take a step back. Maybe the industry is not for you. Because there is an incredible temptation to party all the time, and if you're going to do that, you're going to burn yourself out, not to mention probably destroy your liver. So you want to take care of yourself. And while I have not necessarily been the best over my career at like managing all the health aspects, I have never allowed myself to be where I'm partying every night. To me, that is, what's gotten me are the really nice dinners that go along with some of the industry. a lot of fried foods and sweets. And fortunately, I've got that back under control. But my God, early in my career, I was probably having 4,000 calorie meals, twice, 3 times a week, maybe more. But at any rate, so that's my number one tip for people is recognize what you're good at, what you enjoy doing, and find a pocket within the industry that you can apply for. Now, how do you find people? Look, I can't hold your hand through the process of doing a resume and getting in front of people. I mean, there's going to be some things you got to figure out on your own, but proximity is a big part of it. If you are in Kentucky, the odds are better that you're going to be able to work in the bourbon industry than, say, if you are in Montana. Montana's got some opportunities, don't get me wrong, but there's not as many as Kentucky when it comes to the bourbon industry. So think about that a little bit. Where are you, and what can you do to work yourself into the industry? And that's not even discussing pay. The pay is good, but the pay is better on the sales side. And not even the distiller side, there's really not a lot of high paid distillers out there. I'd say 10 years ago, I knew of a master distiller that was making like $80,000 a year, which is a nice salary, but that was nowhere near what this person was worth or meant to that particular brand. Anyway, so now I'm going to go into some of the particular questions that I have received here from Club Marzipan. And let me go ahead and pull those up. Here we go. All right, so this question is from Philip Bosch, who has become an incredible member of Club Marzipan. We've done a couple barrel picks together. He asked, what is the best and most respectful way to approach a local distillery in hopes of getting a foot in the door? Well, that's a great question, and I think that this is an industry that appreciates your support. So if you just show up one day and are like, I want a job, but you've never been to that place before, then you are not going to get a strong look from that company. I've known a lot of people who started working for a distillery because they were top-tier customers. So I would say if you have a place in mind, if there's a place that is really kind of like suits your fancy, Phil, then I would spend time there. I would have cocktails there, do date nights there, buy their product. And, every single time you get a chance to be with a manager or a distiller or a vice president or a president or owner or whatever, you just let it know, like, man, I really love this place. You guys are doing so many great things there. And then you'll find the right opportunity to be like, hey, so, I'm looking for some new opportunity. What do you think? Here are my skills. And just slip that little resume right on across that desk. But really, in all honesty, this is a relationship business. The bourbon industry, the distilling business, it is purely about relationships. So if you can create a relationship with the company, you are going to have you're going to have a much better chance of, getting your foot in the door than if you did not. All right, so let's go to that next question here. All right, this one comes from Roger Schaefer, also an Oklahoma State alum. My man, who is the first person you talked to about sourcing barrels to start a new brand? Which method is most likely to be successful today? Barrel sourcing or contract distilling? Well, that is a great question, Roger. I don't know if that's exactly about employment, but I like the style of the question, so I'm going to answer it anyway. And it comes down what is your end game with the brand. If your end game with the brand is to sell in 5 years, then you need to build the brand. And you can't build the brand with contract distillation. You got to have some aged whiskey out there. You got to have something that's really going to be impactful. And there's all kinds of strategies for brands. I've seen this play out many times over. But if you don't have good whiskey, you're never going to get a look from anybody. So source barrels is a better way to go than contract distilling if your goal is to sell in 5 years. Now, if your goal is to build a brand and carry it on within the family, pass it down to your son and their son or daughter and so forth, then I would say, and by the way, I know Roger's family, so that's why I said it that way. I would say contract distilling is probably better, because then you can kind of create your own style, your own recipes. And then when you have the capital to break away and start your own distillery, or you can buy some facilities, maybe that's the way to go. But the best of both worlds, the best is usually both worlds. So like what Smoke Wagon has done, and they source and now contract distill, I think it's a very good example of how to do it if you have a long-term plan versus a short-term sale. Okay, so Austin Mayberry. Might you provide some advice on the best methods one might employ in preparing themselves to make an attempt at venturing into the distilled spirits industries, credentials, etc.? Yeah, I think credentials do matter, but it really does come down to more about the people you meet and get to know during that than the actual credential itself. But also, if you're getting a resume across the desk and you see that someone is a bourbon steward for Moonshine University, they have a really good understanding. So if you're a liquor store owner or you're a distributor, for you that's like seeing a bachelor's degree from a prominent university. So you want that, but if it depends on what you want to do. So I do think credentials matter. I think the right credentials matter. And there's the WSET program is great. I love what Moonshine University does. Colin is an incredible educator, and they bring in a lot of great guest professors. But it does come down to who you know as much more than what you know. You see that play out more in the bourbon business than I think in mainstream America. All right, so let's keep these questions coming in. Michael Vaughn. I worked for over 15 years as an analytical scientist in the pharmaceutical industry, so experienced in chromatographic techniques, GC, HPLC, MS, that the distilleries use to test. Oh, this is one of those questions that I have to click on the actual. I gotta click on it to finish it. Here we go. I lost the question there. All right, here we go. I've joked that when I retire at the end of next year that I'm going to move to Kentucky, get a gig as one of the labs. Question: how do you get into lab testing at a distillery? I didn't know whether there's enough work daily, etc., etc. Okay, so this is a great question. This is a kind of a geeky question, and the labs are used constantly. And they are typically food chemists, which food chemistry is a different background than pharmaceuticals. Now, that's to say that pharmaceuticals can't cross over. Definitely at your level, Michael, you're no doubt going to be the sharpest person in any room you walk into when it comes to this stuff. So I think there's real opportunity there for you, but you're going to have to find the director of research. You're looking at a very, very particular skill set that does not come open very often. What happens is these companies will find someone within their ranks that's interested in this space, and they will promote within and train them. So you do see there is a lot of Procter and Gamble people who come over into bourbon that are kind of behind the scenes, but you don't really see a lot of people getting hired from outside for that particular area. But find someone on LinkedIn that's a director of research or innovation or something like that. Or when you're on a tour, I'm not even kidding you, it's this easy. When you are on a tour, just say, hey man, these are my creds. How can I work in the lab? And it's that simple. And heck, maybe, Michael, even one day on a Club Marzipan tour, I will get you set up with a lab chemist. I might just do that. All right, so this will be my last question from Club Marzipan. Brett Tiedemann asks, is it possible to work in the bourbon business as a part-time second job? Absolutely it is. In fact, I would say most of the tour guides that you have when you go through a Kentucky Bourbon Distillery tour, they are part-timers. Very few of them are full-time tour guides. So you 1,000% can get into the business as a part-time worker. There's also, inside the warehouses and the machine shops and places like that, those tend to be union, and it's all broken up by whatever their labor agreement is. But I recall a few years ago, there were some temporary jobs that were available, and those people would work part-time, and they would find themselves working in the warehouses, rolling barrels, doing the bottling line. So it's not uncommon that a temp job will come up in times of vacation and so forth. But the majority of the part-time jobs are on the tourism side. And again, you're thinking about the distilleries, but never forget about the opportunities behind the bar. You can learn so much as someone working at a bar, as a bartender or as a bar back. So think of that also as well. All right, y'all. Thank you for tuning in. Hopefully this career advice has been helpful. I hope that you are able to meet your career goals and possibly get into the bourbon industry. But like I said at the very top, it really is about you. It's about who you are and what you like to do and what you're good at. And find the opportunities within the industry, but also come in looking at this as a job. This is not, and while it's fun, you still have to respect it. You have to appreciate what this moving wheel is, because if you don't, you're going to get knocked off the wheel or the wheel's going to break. You really need to respect the industry in order to be in it. If you come in and you're a drunk, you ain't going to last. I'm just saying. That's going to do it here, folks. If you want to join Club Marzipan, click on that link in the description. For those in Club Marzipan who do not get their questions answered, I will be answering them in the group. So be on the lookout for that video as well. Cheers, y'all. Be safe out there. And remember, vodka sucks unless it's being used to clean up the murder scene of a dead cat. That's getting really long. Cheers.